and I lost my stamina. And very quickly, I don't think I even thought through it super logically. It just, it was this traumatic experience that happened at age 21 when I didn't have really I had some clinical support, but I didn't have any psychological support. And so I just decided, okay, I guess my future that I thought was my future is not, and I'm not going to become a performer. And I stayed in LA. I didn't move to New York. And I started directing theater, which I've also always been interested in. And pretty quickly, I got really curious, like ninja like curious about what had occurred to me. And so I started taking like a lot of whatever I could find vocal education to try to understand what had happened.
Welcome to Leap Like Me, the podcast that helps you to be bold in life, to stretch what's possible, and find more adventure, joy, and purpose along the way. I'm your host, Elissa Weinzimmer. I'm a life coach who can help if you're ready to take a new, more authentic direction in life. On Leap Like Me, we share the inspiring stories of people like you who have made a brave leap and offer practical tips for how to set your leap in motion too. Let's get started. Hello, everyone. This is Elissa Weinzimmer, and welcome to Leap Like Me. Our guest today is Elissa Weinzimmer. She's an award-winning vocal health educator and presence coach and singer. After suddenly losing her own voice at age 21, Elissa began studying the mechanics of voice. And over time, she started to develop a unique and concrete approach that empowers performers, leaders, and speakers to optimize their voices and share them more authentically. So excited to have Elissa with us today. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Lisa. I'm so grateful to be here.
So there's so much that I'm excited to talk to you about. But first, I'm just curious if you would share with us, what is a vocal and presence coach?
Yeah, so I made up this terminology because it's sometimes confusing to explain what I do. When I tell someone I'm a voice coach, most of the time they're like, "Oh, you teach singing lessons," and I'm like, "Yeah, sorta." So essentially, the work that I like to do with people is the work that I like to do with myself and others, let's put it that way, is looking at our human voice on all levels. So physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. What does it mean to have a human voice? What does it mean to use it to speak? What does it mean to use it to sing? What does it mean to use it to express our truth? And a lot of the way that I approach my work has to do with embodiment. My business is called Voice Body Connection. So it's about how do I embody my truth so it can come through my voice. And I find that it's really important for us to understand, especially so many aspects of our body, but especially our nervous system. What is the tuning of my nervous system at any given moment? Because my state, the state of my system will come through in the sound and color and tone of my voice. So essentially, I help people have a healthier, more confident, more authentic voice on all levels.
And who, like, typically are the type of people who are reaching out to you for support?
Yeah, I hear from a couple different subgroups of humans. My background is in performing, and so when I first started my business, a lot of the people I worked with were actors or singers, musical theater performers. I still work with a lot of performers, especially folks come to me, and I can share more, of course, about my story, but folks come to me when they experience something similar to what I experienced, which was a vocal fatigue issue, and need a way to rehabilitate their voice that the clinical world isn't offering. So I work with people when they're having a tired voice, and this can be performers, but also worked with lawyers. I've worked with teachers who are losing their voices, who are having vocal fatigue issues, truck drivers even. um, and and then on the other side, I work with a lot of entrepreneurs. I mean, these dynamics, like the subgroups of people match the subgroups of my system, of course. And so people who are pitching their business, I've worked with a lot of entrepreneurs on pitches, people who just want to have a good elevator speech about, what they do. Generally, if one is having trouble feeling confident about their voice, I find myself interested and able to help.
Hmm. Yeah, and I just want to share here for those who are watching or listening that that I was able to have a session with Elissa. We met earlier this year, and I like ordinarily I wouldn't have reached out. Like I don't think I would have thought to have looked for you specifically,
Hmm.
but it was like when I restarted doing this podcast, like earlier in the spring after a long hiatus, I realized that I was like feeling very stuck, like behind the
Mm.
microphone. And what our conversation really helped me to realize is like a lot of that was about my nervous system
Mm.
and was about like things in the past that had happened that had kind of like my nervous system was still feeling those things. And
Yes.
that I would have to, that by being kind to myself and working through those things and just being like, aware of those things would help me to feel more relaxed whenever I'm public speaking or sharing what, like you say, like is your authentic voice, which I think
Mm.
is really in part why I wanted to bring you on this show, because this show is about it's about leaps, but it's also about when people are really ready to like step into, the leaps are kind of like the way to step into like a more authentic life or a
Yeah.
more authentic expression of themselves, or like the direction that really fits them. And I feel that that involves like us having to voice like what is our authentically us, and
Yeah.
maybe in a way we've never done it before. And it can be like really scary. And so I really wanted to have you on to offer those tools.
I'm grateful
And
for
I was
that.
also really excited to hear that you are having your own leap right now.
Oh yeah. I sure
So we
am.
also get like a juicy leap story out of today as well, which I'm really excited about.
I am happy to bring you all levels of myself. And yeah, to what you're saying, I just want to add too that the thing that has you and I share this, Lisa, it's the reason I was so excited to say yes to being here is this commitment to authenticity. When I really think about the deepest layer of the contribution I would like to make through my teaching work on the planet and also through my own creative work, which is my opportunity to model what I believe in. Um, Authenticity is the most important thing to me. The question of, it's a buzz phrase, speak your truth, but how do we do that? What does that actually mean? How does one connect with what is true? How do you connect with what is true for you? And how do you share that through speech, through expression, through writing, through movement, through whatever your, outlet is? And um, I have like really the core of my work over the last handful of years has been to develop this process that allows us to ask questions and get to a place. I call it the voice body connection process of how am I feeling and how do I want to express that. And um, so, every entrepreneur, we always like to say, the entire world is I'm marketing to everyone. Like I can help everyone. But in that sense, like I really do believe that if you have a voice and you want to use it, then like that's the work that I'm wanting to support. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
All right. So I think we'll get a little bit more into like the practicalities. But I think
Sure.
first, what I want to do is I want to ask you a little bit about just like your own experience with leaps. I mean, it sounds like
Yeah.
at 21, you had a moment where maybe it wasn't like chosen.
Yeah, it
It
wasn't.
happened. But it sounds like you're also like in a moment of like a more intentional leap right now that I'd love to
Mm.
hear about. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I'll take you through the chronology. The way I tell the story these days is that I remember, and I have had honestly like memories, flashbacks in the last couple of years to this memory. When I was in elementary school, I used to spend recess going like as far back to the corner of the soccer field as you could get, where it was like very verdant and there was like this cute little log you could sit on, and there were blackberry bushes, and I just kind of felt like a nature queen in Northern California, a 9-year-old nature queen. And I would go back there with my friend, and we would sit and we would like write improvised spiritual simple songs. Like we would just sit back there and we would have a song circle, and then recess would be over and we'd go back inside. And that's what I did intuitively. I wanted to do that more than play tetherball, more than like play on the monkey bars. Like I went and I sang. And then in the years after that, I started to get put into music classes, and I learned do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. And I was Wendy and Peter Pan. And I started to feel like, oh, whatever I was doing out there on the field is silly and is not real music. And this is real music. This is what I'm supposed to be focusing on. I'm supposed to get good at choir style singing, at operatic style singing, at musical theater singing. Like these are the ways of being artful in my area of interest and gifts. And I spent many years doing that. I would like did my first professional theater production when I was in middle school. I did like a production of The Music Man. I was in the ensemble and like was surrounded by adults. It was so fun. I love my musical theater life. I got to college. I went to the University of Southern California, and even when I got there, like I was immediately performing in musicals. I joined an a cappella group. Um, and I was getting a lot of feedback that I was really good at this. Like I thought that my path was to move to New York and be on Broadway. And then my senior year at USC, I now realize I was like really pushing myself vocally and otherwise. I was pushing myself academically. I was pushing myself socially because I was, thinking I needed to take advantage of the end of my college career and I should be partying and drinking more. And so I was just pushing myself in every way. And I had what I now understand. It wasn't explained to me very clearly at the time, but I had a vocal hemorrhage and also severe onset of acid reflux. And words that no one said to me until 7 years later, I experienced muscle tension dysphonia. I'll pause for the sound for a second. I experienced muscle tension dysphonia, which is a fancy way of saying that the muscles in my throat clamped up really tight and wouldn't let go. And so I just had I completely lost my confidence in my voice, which I'd taken for granted for a long time. And I lost my stamina. And very quickly, I mean, I don't think I even thought through it super logically. It just, it was this traumatic experience that happened at age 21 when I didn't have really I had some clinical support, but I didn't have any psychological support. And so I just decided, okay, I guess my future that I thought was my future is not, and I'm not going to become a performer. And I stayed in LA. I didn't move to New York. And I started directing theater, which I've also always been interested in. And pretty quickly, I got really curious, like ninja like curious about what had occurred to me. And so I started taking like a lot of whatever I could find vocal education to try to understand what had happened, and amassed this knowledge that, again, I got angry pretty quickly. I was like, why did no one teach me this? Someone should have taught me this. And so I started a business teaching voice. And I just started with what I knew, and I kept learning more. And I went to graduate school at the University of Alberta with some incredible mentors, and then did move to New York, which is where I live now. And so the story for a long time, the part that I told for a long chunk of time, I forgot the first part. I was just like, oh, I was doing musical theater, and then I lost my voice, and now I teach voice. But there's like this outer layer on the story that has come in the last handful of years as I was teaching voice and realizing, so, my first big leap, I guess I would say, was to switch into my voice teaching and allow myself to pivot into this new version of my career. But I started to really feel that I couldn't keep supporting other people in authentically expressing their voices if I could just start to feel that feeling of like, oh, there's something else that wants to come through me. Mm-hmm. And if I don't let it through me, I find, I'm also certified in yoga and love the chakra system, and the fifth chakra, which is the throat chakra. That's our creative, expressive, outflowing, is how it's meant to manifest for us. And when we don't express through our throat chakra, when we don't let that which wants to come through us out creatively and expressively, it can create like a sludginess and a toxicity and a blockage. And I was starting to feel more of that sludgy, toxic blockage feeling. And then I started having, the memories of myself on the playground as a kid. And I was in Bali for the summer in 2017, and I went to a kirtan, which is one of those like basically yoga sing-alongs where my mentor up at the front of the room, my now friend Punuwasu, was playing a harmonium and chanting, and I just kind of watched it, and it literally felt like a light bulb went off over my head. I was like, oh, I can do that. Like I need a harmonium. I'd played piano as a kid, but I was like, this makes more sense to me. I want to play with my right hand and pump the bellows with my left hand. The harmonium's like one of those, like, kind of, I call it like a sideways accordion, an Indian instrument.
I
And
have a beloved yoga teacher in Portland who uses one, and
oh, good.
I
Okay,
fell
so
in love
yeah,
with her. Yeah, when she was
I love it.
chanting the harmonium. Yes.
There you go. It's such a beautiful sound, and it like clicked for me. So I actually went home to North America from Bali with a harmonium, which was silly. I should have let someone else carry it for me, but that one got damaged. But yeah, and I just started playing, and then I sort of like serendipitously found a singing teacher who really focuses on expressive sound. My teacher and friend Stephanie Rooker. And then I found a classical Indian singing teacher, my teacher Priya Darshini, who I study with both of them to this day. And actually, just this past weekend was recording songs with both of them in the recording studio. And like slowly but surely, or maybe not even that slowly, it's been, over the course of the last handful of years, um, songs started coming through me, and I've recorded them, and I have been releasing them. I've released 4 songs so far. I'm working on a full album. And yeah, and I'm taking a sabbatical right now from the, I'll pause for the sound. I'm taking a sabbatical right now from the structure of my business as it normally has been for the last number of years, just to give myself space for my own creative process and for the like structure of the business to realign so that I'm not in overexertion mode. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's what's going on. That's like the medium long version of the story. Thanks for
Yes.
listening to the
I
whole
love
thing.
I love this because um I mean you're so the thing that I love, the part of my work that I have gotten really ninja curious about as well is like the kind of like the anatomy of these types
Mm-hmm.
of leaps, right? Like I usually work with people who are at the like I'm pretty sure I need to leap. Like the voice is really calling me, and like my inner voice is really telling me I got to do it. I'm getting the signs, like kind of like what you were talking about, but I'm like scared and I'm still like, I can't get past that. Right. And so I can
Yeah.
like help them through that time. So I love this because I am really curious about like what you've found as you've moved through the stages of, I mean, because there's a couple of things here that are about your leap, which is about like take
Mm.
actually allowing the singing to come back, like to for you to express that and to for that to be to say like, oh, I'm not just a vocal and presence coach. I am more than that, and I'm going to allow
Mm-hmm.
this other thing to come out, which maybe feels a little scary, I'd imagine.
Totally scary, for sure.
And
Mm-hmm.
an identity shift of like, something that you thought you were doing and now suddenly this other thing wants to come out. And so and to allow all of that, and then to also like allow time, which is really like what a sabbatical is for, right? Is to like
Yeah.
allow the time and space for that to come out, really like fully and intentionally in many ways. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. The sabbatical has been such a privilege to build myself this time to do, and we can all do it. It's a shifting of things, like I had to figure out like incomes coming from other places than where I normally get it from. And but yeah, it mostly, the biggest hurdle was to get over my own attachment to, this is what I've built, this is what I should be doing, and give myself the permission to do something differently for a period of time. And it did feel, when I sent the newsletters out to my mailing list saying like, and first I was working with a group of teacher trainees who I'm, planning on starting an instructor program. And I was just starting to work with this group of trainees. And what was really beautiful is that everything conspired so that all of us agreed it was not the right time to like plow forward. But it felt so vulnerable to tell this group of people first, like, I think I need to take a break for a while. And then to tell, like, there was infrastructure and things I had to kind of like purposefully deconstruct in order to do this. Um, and it does feel like an identity issue. That's exactly what I would say. It felt the same way when I was 21 when I lost my voice. I think
Mm-hmm.
my whole identity felt so tied up in my singing abilities and my performing abilities. And, it was like, I literally joke, and I think other people who went to high school with me would also joke that my identity in high school was like I was the girl who was in choir and performing in the musicals. Like that was who I was. And so, yeah, it can feel like such a stripping away to make changes and take leaps like this, because it feels like a changing of identity.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like a deconstructing of something that's been built. It's
Yeah.
scary.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, you are someone who is so like you've made embodiment like part of your work, right? So, um, maybe for those who are listening who maybe haven't delved very much into embodiment, could you tell us a little bit about how you would explain that to other people?
Yeah, I hope it becomes a word that is more common in our lexicon moving
Me
forward.
too. Yeah.
Um, to me, embodiment is a state of being. It's a way of being inside one's body. Um, it is inhabiting all that is true fully. And so, like, even I might actually address it by actually sharing that process that I walk people through. So, I call this the voice body connection process. And essentially, it is, pardon me, essentially, it is an opportunity to say what's going on here in my system in order to understand how I'm feeling and what I want to say. So, I'll ask us four questions. First question is, what is the strongest sensation you feel in your body right now? And I'll tell you that I feel tingly in my feet. And I'll also share that when I ask this question, which is very importantly the first question of this process and many embodiment processes, um, when I ask other people this question, a lot of people are like, I don't know. I feel good. I feel fine. It's like, cool. Go into your feet. Like, to describe to me what your feet are feeling. Describe to me what your hands are feeling. Describe to me what your skin is feeling. Describe to me what your gut is feeling. Like, there's always something going on, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as we start to pay attention, um, as we start to attune, our body is actually giving us all sorts of signals. The Bessel van der Kolk book is The Body Keeps the Score. The body's, and it's exactly like you said before about the nervous system. The nervous system is the part of the body that is the recording device, not letting us forget those experiences that we've had on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyway, if I go back to my answer to that question, I feel it tingling in my feet. Second question I ask in the voice body connection process is, why do I think I'm feeling that? And actually, my answer right now is like, I don't know. But maybe also it's more of my body is alive having this conversation with you. I'm aware of parts of my body that I go through my day not aware of much of the time when I don't actually ask or pay attention. Um, Third question is, what are my emotions about noticing this? And really, by the way, these four questions that I'm asking are different versions of asking, how do you feel? But just
Mm-hmm.
more specifically. So, how do I feel in my body? I feel tingling in my feet. What are my thoughts about that? I think it is probably just because I'm paying attention to more of my body. What are my emotions about that? Pretty neutral. I feel, I actually feel kind of like it feels a little bit like a wakefulness, and like I think I feel grateful and happy about it overall emotionally. And what do I want? What do I desire? What is that layer of feeling? It's Yeah, it's to bring my whole self into this conversation, which maybe is another way of defining embodiment. Embodiment is bringing one's whole self into the moment, into the conversation, into the relationship, into the experience, into the event, whatever it is. Just starting with my body and asking myself where I'm at and bringing more of myself along more often.
Mm-hmm. And so as you think about your own process with like deciding to allow your singing to come out, to
Mm-hmm.
take the time off to explore it, um can you think of a moment when you needed to use that for yourself, or how did embodiment
Every day,
play
all the
in for
time.
you?
All the time, every day. I mean, I've actually been joking lately. So I got COVID in July, and we're recording this in late September. So it's been about 3 months. Um, I have had a really nasty long COVID cough this entire time, since I quote unquote got better. And I've been joking. I keep saying the cobbler has no shoes because, of course, like this is exactly the stuff I teach. I know exactly what to do. I know like steam twice a day. I know the warm ups to do, like gentle humming. Like I totally know how to take care of myself. I have not been perfect about taking care of myself. Um, it's easy to just like get tired and burn out and be frustrated. And that happens with me with my embodiment practices as well, all the time. I'm totally not perfect. But as often as I can remember, I like to ask myself, where are you at? What are the
Hmm.
strongest sensations in your body? Why do you think you're feeling them? What are your emotions about that? What are your desires about that? And it doesn't always take the form of like those four voice body connection process questions. Sometimes it's journaling, sometimes it's um, putting on a piece of music and moving, sometimes it is singing, it's sitting down and just doing my singing practice and letting it come through my singing practice. Um, there's so much mystery in taking a big leap that I just find that like I'm just constantly I don't know if I would call it searching for answers because I'm trying to not grasp or reach or need. Like it really is, I think, going through a big leaping process at a more advanced age. I say that like I'm an elder. Not an elder yet, but like, a decade plus later to go through such a big transition. And I really appreciate the way you said earlier that I'm choosing this one more mindfully, which is true. Um, I'm just, I'm using every tool that I know as a form of prayer, I guess, is what I would say, as a form of like asking and asking to be received and asking for guidance of the larger force that is around me.
Hmm. And if like, I often think that like taking a leap, and particularly to follow a more authentic path, can be so challenging sometimes because there have been forces in people's lives that have kind of shut down their voice.
Oh, yeah.
It sounds like you want.
Oh, so, ask me the whole question, but just, oh, yes, to that one.
Yeah, I find that one. And they, and kind of like you said, like sometimes like they don't feel it in their body, or they're not used to listening to that inner voice, or even to take direction from it. And so I'm just curious, like,
Yeah.
well, first, it sounds like you have some thoughts about like the ways that voices can get shut down, or I'm just curious how you observe that in your own work. Like, what are some of
Yeah.
the forces there?
I mean, I think we're living in a moment on this planet where there is an absolute epidemic of voices being shut down. Um, Women's voices are suppressed to various degrees all over the world. Um, the way that power is embodied on the planet right now is extremely capitalist and patriarchal and white supremacist. And yeah, I mean, honestly, part of my sabbatical too has been absolutely about slowing down to do some really big inner work for myself personally about how I situate myself amongst these like big issues on our planet and certainly in the United States. And um, just like, what am I building? How am I building it? Pardon me. What am I building? How am I building it? Is my way of proceeding with that which I want to offer in the world, the way I want to be of service, is it in alignment with my values? Um, so yeah, it's just like, it honestly is a challenging time to be a human being on planet Earth and express yourself fully. It's a challenging time to be authentic. Um, I can scroll through my Instagram feed. I bet you can scroll through yours, and we can see lots of things about authenticity. But really, truly, if we like kind of take in the like larger umbrella of the world we're living in, that is not the majority of the conversation. And even when authenticity is spoken of, um, it's an authenticity inside following the scripts that of what one is supposed to do. I personally, I live with so much freedom and privilege. I want to say that first. And also, I personally really felt impacted by I like to call them scripts, like the rules, um, about like I should, be a good girl. I should go to college, which that's a newer script. Like that's, my ancestors didn't have that one.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of our ancestors didn't, women especially. I should have a career that supports me. I should have like a steady income and a steady paycheck. Um, my parents have been really supportive about my creativity and my entrepreneurship, but it's still like I felt the weight of like should around all of that I have for so much of my life. And I have teachers, coaches, friends, colleagues who have grown up in all sorts of different environments, that were like way more oppressive and had way more rules and way more scripts than the ones I grew up with. So I think that this is just a very real thing. It's a very real thing. And there are actually consequences, um, when people raise their voice and say what they really mean. In many parts of the world, there are very serious consequences for doing so. We're seeing that happen in Iran right now. And so, yeah, I take this question extremely seriously around what are the limitations that would block me from speaking? What are the limitations that would block someone else from speaking? They're very real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I really appreciate you like highlighting both that and but also the importance of finding the ways to have an authentic
Mm-hmm.
voice. And in our own conversation, I felt like you had really helped me kind of find a breakthrough for my one of my own scripts. So I'm
Mm,
from a Japanese American family who was on the west coast of the US, and that as an immigrant family, they like suffered extreme racism on the west coast of the United States during World War II. And so there are like scripts inside of me that first of all are from like the Japanese culture of like, conforming and don't, like if possible, just kind of don't speak up, just go with the
mm-hmm.
flow. And then there's also the like, it's not safe to speak up. It's not safe to be yourself. It's not safe to be Japanese in this like highly racist environment. So don't bring your authentic self at all. So that's like, you know, all inside of me. And so,
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to like bringing my voice, I'm like, wow, like this, there's so much inside of me and my history and also in my nervous system around that. And so one of the ideas you offered to me was the idea of the polyvagal theory,
Yeah.
which just like really helped me to think, like I'm on an anti-racist journey as a coach and a leader and as a person. And I started to realize that like, that like when you have like some of these experiences, you have been, it's like, yeah, your nervous system has recorded it.
Hmm.
And we have to find ways to get around that in order to speak our truth and to be brave and to say what we really need to say and express. And so, like, this offered that theory, if you want to share it with
Yeah.
our listeners, like, really helped me
Yeah.
to kind of think about, okay, how could I start doing that then?
Yeah, I would love to. It would be my honor. And I'm so glad that you said the word safety, that you spoke about safety, because that's the thing I wanted to call in. When given a choice between our safety and our ability to express ourselves, we will and ought to always choose safety. That is totally okay. And so the process of, I'm going to say the word like thawing, the process of thawing the nervous system from those moments of like frozen, um, of when the freezing occurred. The freezing occurred because we didn't feel safe. And we very likely may have not been safe. And so to recalibrate the perception of safety in this moment, to start to like ask, am I safe right now? And if you're still not safe, the answer is cool, keep protecting yourself.
Totally.
But if you are safe, then to start the thawing process of learning a new opportunity for vulnerability and sharing and expression. So, yes, I have found that polyvagal theory has been one of my absolute favorite tools for understanding this. And so, to summarize polyvagal theory, it's a relatively recent neuroscience concept discovered by Dr. Stephen Porges in the last, I believe, 30-ish years. And Dr. Porges also works with a psychologist named Deb Dana. And a lot of my understanding of polyvagal theory comes through Deb's writing and research. And essentially, what polyvagal theory has helped me understand is a more nuanced way of understanding the human nervous system, because the way I thought about it before was like fight or flight or cool, right? And fight or flight is part of it, but it's a little bit more nuanced than this.
And also that
So,
what I
mhm,
find with that, I mean, I also thought, like, for example, just talking in front of a microphone, it's like, oh, I
mhm,
feel nervous. Like, I can't remember what I want to say. Like,
mhm,
there's, and then there's like oh, I feel anxious, right? Or like I'm in the
mhm,
fight or flight sort of
mhm.
situation. And that doesn't, then I don't know what to do with that, right?
Right.
Like, and I feel like that's what this theory kind of helps, is like,
Yeah.
of what to do that could be different, rather than just feeling shame or like, oh, I'm not good at that, I'm going to avoid it. Like, just like the sort of judgmental type things that can then fill the space.
Yeah.
I always
Totally.
think it's so helpful to have tools of like, how can we move beyond that? And that's what I really found
Yeah.
enlightening
Amazing.
about this theory. Yeah.
So I'll try to encapsulate it briefly and in a way that absorbs well in your eardrums. Um, I'll also say that a resource that I often send people to is Deb Dana's Beginner's Polyvagal Theory Guide. So that's something that people can look up. Um, so essentially, when Dr. Porges looked at the nervous system and specifically at the vagus nerve, which is the largest nerve of the autonomic nervous system, the involuntary nervous system, he realized that there were these branches that kind of let us know that there are actually these three states of activation. The first state of activation, and the one that we're often aiming for, is called ventral vagal. That's the official terminology for it. I like to nickname it stay and play. This is when we feel regulated. This is when we feel safe, social, connected to each other. This is like our present, confident, expansive, authentic state. Yeah. So that's cool. We're all aiming for that.
Thank you for that nickname. I like that
Yeah,
better. The
stay and
ventral
play.
vagal.
My joy. Totally. Now, when a real or perceived threat to the nervous system occurs, the next place we go, the next notch down, if you will, is fight or flight. And that's the nickname for sympathetic activation. And sympathetic is the state where your heart starts beating really fast, your sweat glands activate, your pupils dilate, your digestive system shuts down because that's not the priority right now. We've got to fight or flee, right? And this, like, depending upon how high the knob is turned, the volume is turned on this state, a low grade fight or flight might just feel like kind of like anxiety, nervousness, and a high grade is like I'm having a full on panic attack or I'm actually literally running away from danger, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or punching it in the face. Now, if the real or perceived threat continues for long enough, or our nervous system gets to the point where we're like, I can't keep this up, this is taking too much energy, the third state and the next notch down is the dorsal vagal state. And the dorsal vagal state is the freeze and collapse state. And this is where, in order to preserve our energy and our safety, we will contract, we will condense, we will freeze, we will shut down. And when the dial is turned really high on the state, this can literally look like, dead body situation, like complete and total shock. And when it's a low grade dorsal vagal, it may look like a really kind of depressive shutdown, but like it could be like kind of under the surface. A couple things to know. So Deb Dana, one of the ways she teaches this that I love is she teaches it on a ladder. So the ventral vagal, the regulated state is up at the top, and the two dysregulated states are underneath that. Fight or flight's in the middle, and freeze, collapse is down at the bottom. And so one thing to know is that if you've gone into frozen collapse mode around something, whether it's, immediate frozen and collapsed or whether it's a prolonged frozen and collapsed, I can't public speak, I suck at this, I'll never do it. You have to walk up through the ladder. In order to get through regulation, you are going to walk through the fight or flight zone. So it's actually not a symptom of you doing anything wrong. If your heart starts beating fast and your sweat glands activate and you get anxious and you get overwhelmed, you have to walk through that zone in order to move your way back up to regulation. The other thing that I think is so beautiful about picturing a ladder is what we can start to do is get familiar with our own personal cues about how we behave on our way from fight or flight, the middle of the ladder, up to ventral vagal, up to the stay and play at the top. Because that pathway right there, that's the one you want to get really good at. That's you regulating your nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone's different. Some people will find that the easiest way for them to do that in certain situations is breathing. Some people will need to like get underwater and scream, and it depends on the person and it depends on the situation. Chanting, humming, making sound, rocking, like there are myriad ways, all of the ways that you think of as like meditating or calming yourself down or relaxing or going deep. These are all you can categorize these as nervous system regulation practices. Mm-hmm. And some of them will regulate your nervous system quickly. Some of them will regulate your nervous system slowly. Taking an hour-long yoga class, the way you feel at the beginning versus the end, that was a nervous system regulation practice, right? But you don't always have an hour to take a yoga class, right? So sometimes it's 3 breaths. Sometimes it's shaking, like shaking your body out, right? And essentially, the work that I most like to help people do is understand how to walk from that dysregulated state into the related state. Because the thoughts in our brain will change depending upon the state. In fight or flight, my thoughts that I literally hear a song in my head in fight or flight mode. It goes like this. It goes, there's no time, 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 there's no time. It like makes me feel like, oh my God, everything's wrong, right?
Yeah.
And so I actually wrote myself a song, which will be on my next album, which is the There Is Time song. There is time. Nice. There is time. And that is actually one of my favorite ways. I love singing my song to regulate my nervous system. So, so it's, that's polyvagal theory. That's polyvagal theory in how long did that take me? 5 minutes?
I love this. No, it's so helpful. First of all, I'm very excited about that song. I love the idea of like this call and response of like,
there is time.
And also what you said, just like so resonate. I was just talking with a very good friend this morning, and she was talking about like something really hard has happened in her life, and she's like,
Mm,
she said she was just she's trying to be use meditation and mindfulness to like really help her. And she said she was sitting with her thoughts and just noticed that in certain states, like her thoughts, like the story they tell is like very dark and
yes,
very negative. And so I'm imagining it's like that's kind of like what you're talking about, like depending on
that's it.
where you're at. Yeah.
Yeah, the way that Deb Dana says it, which is so brilliant, is she says story follows state. Meaning, whatever state you're in, whatever, and you can start to like think of those three levels as like a state.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever state you're in, the story that you believe about your life in this moment will follow your nervous system state. And so that's why it's so useful. I find that understanding, I mean, this is how I feel about everything about the body and voice and the world is like if I can understand how something works, I love how to. I'm a how-to person. If I can understand how something works, then that's cool because now I have vocabulary to understand why I'm at where I'm at, aka I can have compassion for myself. It's about
Mm-hmm.
compassion
Mm-hmm.
because I can't actually regulate my nervous system by being like, you suck, you suck, you suck, Elissa, calm down, you're being ridiculous. It's not an effective way to regulate my nervous system. But I can regulate my nervous system by going, oh, sweetheart, of course you feel this way. Of course this is hard. Of course your heart is beating fast right now. Of course. Let's take 3 breaths. Let's sing a song. Let's breathe.
Yeah.
Of course you feel this way.
Yeah, you're reminding me of the things that I say to my daughter when she's upset, right? It's like that
Hmm.
mama energy.
It is, and it's the really good, beautiful mama energy. It's not the mama
Yeah.
energy that all of us were raised with. I'm so glad you say that to your daughter. And the most important people we can say it to is
Yeah.
ourselves. Because if we
Yeah.
speak to ourselves this way, then we will be much more likely to speak to each other this way. And that is another version of speaking our truth.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so beautiful. So, um, I wonder if you could just help us with one how to that is on
Yeah.
my mind.
Yeah.
So this, I am like really thinking of like my clients right now and thinking about like when they're taking like a new direction that can feel scary, and it can feel like also like very scary in the nervous system. um there are moments where they have to start sharing what they're doing, and you kind of mentioned this with your own, like
Elevator
your
pitch.
email, well, with your email to
Yeah.
your
Mm.
trainees.
Mm-hmm.
But so let's just like, okay, so here's a scenario is that, someone who is leaving like a career, a profession that they have invested lots of time, and their identity is wrapped up in it, and they have decided they've got to take a new path though, and they're like anticipating walking into, the boss's office, or, their partner's office, and telling them that
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be that they're leaving, that they're going to do something different. Like, what would be some suggestions for you of like how to prepare for that moment, or to even be in that moment right
Yeah.
then? Yeah.
Well, first of all, it's okay to navigate difficult moments messily. I'm going to say that first. It's really, really okay because truly, like these systems that I was talking about, patriarchy, white supremacy, toxic capitalism, growth culture, we're always productive, we're always building. Perfectionism is a staple of everything that keeps all of that in place. So it's really okay to navigate that situation imperfectly. That's the first thing I would say. It's also really okay to be nervous about it. Like, really okay to have all the feelings, really okay for the heart to start beating fast, for, the fear to come in, for the thoughts to loop. Um, we can't control our first thought or reaction, but we can decide what we do from there. So every time that moment comes up of, oh my God, everything's like, it's going to be horrible to talk to my boss. It's going to be so terrible. They're going to lecture me. They're going to tell me I'm messing up and I'm doing everything wrong and I'm never going to succeed. And, when the worst fear stuff comes up, having that moment of compassion of course I'm afraid. Of course I'm imagining the worst case scenario. Like, this is scary. It's okay to be scared right now. Having that moment first, and then also choosing what would regulate my nervous system right now. In this moment where I'm thinking about it before I even go into the office, what would regulate my nervous system right now? Another tool I was going to offer for nervous system regulation that I find to be one of the fastest ones that works for me and a lot of people is gratitudes. So literally, and I like to say it out loud because I'm a voice coach, literally like, I'm so grateful that I'm going to literally talk about my life right now. I'm so grateful that my home is filled with plants. I'm so grateful that I'm on a call with Lisa and being able to be of service here in this podcast community. I'm so grateful that I'm wearing a dress that I love and earrings that I love. I like put on bright clothing today. I'm so grateful that the sun is shining. I'm so grateful that I get to talk to my father later today. We have a call scheduled. I'm so grateful that that I make music, that I had time to sing today. Like, just say 10 things out loud. Really, really fast way to regulate our nervous system. So in that moment, maybe those 10 things would look like, I'm so grateful I've had this job for the past 20 years. I'm so grateful it's gotten to me to this point. I'm so grateful for my boss. I'm so grateful for, you know, all the skills that I've learned and what I've been doing. I'm so grateful that I have the courage to take a big leap. So on and so forth. So that can be the thing that helps. I find one of the fastest ways to help the looping in the moments that the fear comes in. And then the actual moment occurs. And like I said, it's probably going to be messy. You're probably going to leave and be like, I should have said, I could have said, oh my God, why did it happen that way? My worst fears came true. I've had a situation recently where literally my worst fears came true.
Yeah.
And then the cool thing on the other side of it is you're like, I'm still alive. Pinch
Yeah.
myself. Like, I'm still here.
My worst
I
fear
did
has
it.
literally come true as well in a work
Yeah.
situation. And I was like, well, that
Yeah.
happened, but
Right. Like, maybe the
here I
person
am.
literally does lecture you and all of your worst fears come true. And then on the other side of it, you're still alive and you still get to make your own choices and live
Yeah.
your life that is authentic to you. And I mean, there can be a total contraction when the worst things occur, but then there's like so much expansion because, like, cool, I'm still me, I'm still alive.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah. And so then again, on the other side of the, milestones, whatever they be, like talking to the boss, sending the newsletter, et cetera, et cetera. Just continuing in those moments to go, okay, I'm looping. Okay, I'm freaked out. Okay, cool. My nervous system dysregulated. Let me re regulate right now. And this is, I think, the reason that the Buddhists and all of the different spiritual practices say that everything is contained in the present moment, because we actually can't really plan for tomorrow or the next day. Um, And even if we could, the planning we can do is in this present moment right now. If I want my nervous system to be more regulated tomorrow in a difficult situation, let me regulate it right now, right here where I am. Let me practice now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, Alyssa, thank you so much for sharing your expertise and also your journey with us today. Before we close, is there anything else that you feel called to share with this community or anything that we didn't touch on that you would have liked to?
Yeah, I mean, that this has been such a beautiful, expansive conversation. I haven't been on a podcast in quite a while because I'm in the middle of this like kind of transitional sabbatical time, and I have my own podcast, but it's been on hiatus. And so to like be on the microphone talking to you and sharing feels really special. I'm so grateful. I have been feeling very private lately, so I feel so grateful for the opportunity to kind of like come up with my head above water and just like check in and say hi. And I just want to thank you for the opportunity to speak and to share.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I mean, I work with a lot of creatives and artists and people who maybe haven't done that for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's so brave. and also really inspiring. So thank you for modeling that just in your own story, your own
Mm,
journey, and sharing part of that with us today.
my pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. Well, if people want to continue on and just stay in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, so for my teaching work, the website is voicebodyconnection.com. There's a mini course you can take. It's the How to Speak Your Truth mini course, so feel free to dive into that. And if you want to find my music, for my music, I go by my first and my middle name. So it's Elissa Moss, Elissa, Elissa, and then Maas. You can either go to elissamoss.com or search on your favorite streaming, wherever you listen to your music platform, and you should find me there.
Yeah, I saw you had released a new song on Spotify, so that's
Yep.
really
Yep.
exciting.
There are four out now. Yeah. And
So cool.
hopefully an album, a full album by the winter.
Great. Well, thank you.
Thanks,
It was
Lisa.
such a pleasure talking with you today.
Thank you so, so, so much.